Okay, so today we're going to look at criticisms of materialism. Remember, materialism is the idea that the only thing that exists is the physical, and the physical can fully explain consciousness. Examples of materialism are things like behaviorism and functionalism. The key idea with kind of criticisms, dualist criticisms of materialism, is that materialism misses something out. Okay, so materialism misses something out. That's, in the two criticisms we're going to look at today, the key idea, I think, that it forgets something. This something is normally a conscious experience. And the problem with it missing something is that any theory of consciousness needs to be a complete theory of consciousness. So if it misses something, it's not complete. Materialism. Let's just define materialism again for ourselves. Materialism is the idea that there is only the physical. Okay. So the first criticism we're going to look at is a criticism specifically of behaviorism. Behaviorism, remember, is the idea that the mental descriptions of mental states can be reduced to descriptions of behavior without loss of meaning. So we have this very simple idea that you have the input over here, nothing in the middle, and then the output. And that's it, just the observable stuff. Now, one big criticism of this is that mental states really are quite important in explaining behavior. And in fact, you can't explain behavior fully without reference to mental states. An example of this would be the perfect actor objection. The perfect actor objection imagines this guy. This guy here, he is a great actor. And um, he's put on trial for a crime, some crime that he's committed, and he realizes the only way out really is to behave like he is mad. So what's he gonna do? Well, he's gonna behave perfectly like he's mad. Behaves perfectly mad. Now, perfectly is really important here. There's nothing that he's doing wrong. It's not in any way clearly an act. But he is acting. Well, a behaviorist then, and this is the kind of the conclusion, behaviorism would miss something out. It misses the truth. The truth that he actually isn't mad. By missing out the description of the mental state, they miss out a key part. Now, there's another example of that. I'm not going to write it down, but Hilary Putnam, he gives a different objection. He gives the super Spartan objection. These super Spartans, they behave perfectly like they're not in pain. They never show any sign of pain, but they do actually feel pain. And so behaviorism then would miss out the conscious experience of pain in its description. How might we respond to this if we were behaviorists? Well, one way that some behaviorists respond, like Carl Hempel responds to this by saying, look, if this actor if he's acting perfectly, if it's perfect acting, and this is like down to kind of the sweat on his brow, his heart rate, everything, then he is mad. He just is. It doesn't make any sense to say he's acting perfectly mad, but he isn't mad. Carl Hempel says no. If he's acting perfectly mad, then he is No. Okay, so that's a criticism specifically of behaviorism. You can really only use that as a criticism of behaviorism. I want to move on to kind of a big criticism, which is a criticism of any materialist theory. And this will really ring bells, okay? Because we've kind of covered this before. This is the hard problem of consciousness. We've looked at this a little bit in terms of Leibniz and Leibniz's gap, that gap between the material and the mental, the problem of other mind, the problem of the mind-body problem. Wow, sorry, I couldn't speak for a second. That was interesting. I just want to bring that up to date a little bit. David Chalmers introduced this term, the hard problem of consciousness, and this really applies to all materialist theories, be they behaviorism or functionalism or identity theory or whatever. Hard problem of consciousness is this. It says that there's a fundamental difference between two things. There's a difference. I think I'm in green there, aren't I? Whoops. Sorry. That's horribly unprofessional of me. Is that red? Okay. There's a difference. And this is an explanatory difference, right? There's a difference in the way that we can explain things between, on the one hand, the physical, and on the other hand, the mental. And the difference is this. The physical can be what we call objectively understood. It is objective. What that means is that you can go to a biology lesson and open up a textbook and fully understand how a brain works. Okay? Well, we can't because we don't fully understand how brains work yet, but we will. So it is objective. It is just a set of facts that can be put into a book and explained to you, and you would fully understand it, okay, without having that thing. So you might cut up a cow's heart or something. Don't. They're really big. Maybe go for a pig's heart. Okay, so you can explain that fully. The physical, it is objective, whereas the mental, says Chalmers, well, the mental is subjective. You can't go to a psychology lesson, let's say, and fully understand what it is like to be another person. You might understand thought processes, that's what psychology is, but you don't understand what it is like. So the physical is probably best described as what is. Okay. Whereas the mental is the qualia, right? Oh, don't know why I put a W there. An O there. Wow. Qualia, the subjective consciousness, is what it is like. You have a what it is like. I have a what it is like. And they're not necessarily the same thing. So Chalmers says that you can't bridge this gap. That's the hard problem of consciousness. They aren't the same at all. So I can explain everything, he says, about what it is, the physical, and I won't have explained what it is like. Because if I explain what it is, I'm putting it in objective terms. And you can't describe subjective things in objective terms. The philosopher Thomas Nagel gives us an example. You may be aware, possibly, that Chalmers also gives us an example of zombies, but I think Nagel's is better. Thomas Nagel gives us an example. He says, look, there are these things called bats. Here is my freehand attempt at drawing a bat. I apologize, obviously. This is going to be terrible. There we go. That's good enough, right? I don't know whether you can tell it's a bat. But, okay, there are these things called bats, honest. And these things, these bats, well, we can understand them physically, objectively. Okay? We can understand how it works. We can understand its anatomy. We can understand that it's virtually blind and that it experiences the world through sonar, through emitting sounds and getting the shock waves back, and that's how it sees the world. And we understand also that it emits quicker frequencies when it's kind of zooming, honing in on an insect. So it slows down its kind of perception of time, so it can catch things more easily. That's cool, isn't it? Anyway, so we can understand how a bat works objectively. But Chalmers says, look, we can understand all of that, okay? All of it. But we're still left with the question. And his question is this, it's also the title of his paper. What is it like to be a bat? And that is something that we can't answer with this stuff. The reason we can't is because it's an unbridgeable gap. This gap is simply too big. He says, look, we can imagine what it's like to be a bat, but we don't know what it is like. We don't know exactly what it is like, because imagining is just a human imagining what it would be like for them to be a bat. But being a bat is something you can only know if you are that bat. And that's the hard problem of consciousness. That a complete physical explanation of consciousness leaves out the subjective experience of consciousness. The thing it misses out is consciousness itself.